Welcome to the Swing Trading with Cycles channel. We're going to do our update on crude oil today. It is April 23rd, 2023. It's the weekend update. We'll also look at some energy names. We'll look at XLE, the ETF, and some individual names. And so the story of crude oil is really one of it being in a range still, as we've been talking about in recent videos. Always take a look at the pinned comment. You'll see past videos there and also other asset classes. Everything is organized into playlists and also important concepts like swing highs and swing lows. So speaking of swing highs, we formed a daily swing high as of the April 12th candle. So this candle here on day 16. So these lines all mean something. Let's talk about them. So and also always remember, candlesticks are just a visual representation of a price range. That's important because prices trend, and so once price starts making higher highs, it means it's probably trending higher. And when it starts making lower lows, it's trending lower. The thing about this is it's been just in a range, right? This is an uptrend. This is a downtrend. It almost takes out all the move. Uptrend just to basically get you back to where you were, and then it wipes everything out. Up, down, and then this is your breakdown. So you can see we've just been oscillating within this channel, and then we did break down below that channel here. Again, this is your daily chart. This was a daily cycle low here on day 30. And then since then, we've had this acceleration. So all the way from below where the low of the range was to the high end of the range. And we've been talking about this for months on this channel. The range is a low of $70, which again, we broke below, and this actually printed a low at 64. So we finally got into that $60 area that we've been looking for. Didn't get quite as low as I thought it would. But then we just kind of rocket ship up. But again, where did we stop? Not a coincidence, right around 83. So what is this number? Exactly 83.49. And you can think about this swing high as being really pivotal. That's at 83.32. So once you saw that we couldn't stay above that 83, call it 84, right? You need to kind of see price at like 84 and obviously beyond. We couldn't even get to 84 quite there. We started a little downtrend, and that's where we're at now. Friday was day 23. And so we also talked about the fact, look at this huge gap here. That's what these lines are, right? So the gap from this low, from this high to this low here, we're basically filling that gap, starting to. We need to get down to 75.80 to completely fill that gap. And since it's day 23, it seems likely that we're going to continue the downtrend. And of course, there will be bounces along the way, right? We'll do something like this, is the idea, right? Now, where do we get our daily cycle low? This one was day 30. This was 39. So it's probably not that far away. So that's the other thing. So it doesn't mean we need to see a ton of downside, but probably at least a gap fill, if not a little more. Baby comes down and undercuts this here. So it looks like we're getting, so to summarize, it looks like we're getting a daily cycle high here on day 16. Although importantly, it did make a higher high above these previous daily cycle highs, although just marginally. And again, it stayed within this broader consolidation range. So you could also say it's a false breakout. We'll see how it develops. On the weekly chart, more importantly, it would appear that that was a weekly cycle low as well on week 15 after this amazingly choppy weekly cycle, which topped out on week 7. Again, remember that daily chart, how we've just kind of been moving in a snake sideways fashion? That's what a weekly chart ends up looking like when you do that. But it's the same idea. We broke down below that low with this big red bearish candle, and then we closed below it again with this green candle. This was like your uh-oh moment, closing below 70 on a weekly level. But then you had this huge acceleration to the upside. And that gap that we looked at on the daily happened on a Monday. And so you actually end up with a gap on the weekly. So this gap fill that we're talking about on the daily will also be a weekly gap fill for all intents and purposes. Again, you can see this broader consolidation range we've been in. So now the question is, do we go all the way back to the low end of the range at 70? And look at this candle. Big lower low here. I'll just move this line. That's what you're looking for. Again, as we said, the market is all about higher highs and lower lows. We just made a big lower low on the weekly chart. And so the expectation for next week would be follow through. So a candle like this. So we make another lower low below that low, which is to say this weekly cycle may have just topped out on week 3, which would be incredibly bearish. But because we know this thing has been moving in this kind of sideways fashion, probably doesn't mean some kind of waterfall. probably more of a sort of grindy situation inside this range that will just be more frustrating than anything else, right? Like imagine something that shapes up like this, right? Like no one is super happy. I mean, unless you caught the tippy top and you caught that, but like this isn't like a waterfall down, which is what you want to see if you want to get short kind of thing. So that's the weekly chart. And then finally, if we look at the monthly, right? Like again, thinking about that notion of like are we making higher highs or lower lows on these different time frames? So what are we doing on the monthly chart? So on the monthly chart, we made a higher high so far, and now we've gone red. And so we are threatening to make a lower low. Now, because we only have 1 week left in April, we're probably not going to make a bearish outside monthly candle. But the bearish case would be a follow through candle next month, something like that, that threatens to make a lower low below this one here. Again, so this is actually the $64 level where we have that kind of breakdown. So that would be like your ultimate kind of bearish scenario, if you will. Right now, there's no. I would say at best, you're set up for more downside for the next week or two, at least for the daily cycle decline. And so let's look at the actual energy names. We'll start with XLE to give ourselves some grounding, and then we'll go through just a few of the names. I would say Exxon is the one that's bucking the trend. Let's look at the daily chart. So similar gap here as oil itself, except in this case for XLE, it's holding that gap much better. So 84.25 is kind of your line in the sand. That's where if you go below that, then you're kind of getting into gap fill territory, which would a filling of the gap would get you back down to, what is that? Basically $83. So it's like $1, a gap that's a little bit more than $1 wide. So that's what you want to look out for. It does appear that we have a top here. So this looked like a top in real time on day 12, but then we continue to go marginally higher. So that's 13. So that's day 20. So that's a potential top on day 20, the same way that oil has a potential top on what I think it's day 12, maybe it is. And this is day 25. So actually looking a little bit stronger than oil itself, but still same kind of pattern, ultimately seeking out a gap fill down to 83. And on the weekly chart, similar idea, made in this case only a slight lower low on the weekly chart, but that is notable that that's the direction that it's moving in. And again, after this move, which appeared to be a weekly cycle low, you can see this line here is a 10 period moving average, so your 10-week moving average in this case, closed above it for a few weeks, for 3 weeks actually. So good odds that this is actually a new weekly cycle, which would be really bearish, which would set up a good risk reward short in that case, obviously. Well, let's look at the monthly chart finally for XLE, get a sense of what that's looking like. Okay, and on the monthly chart, just kind of not really doing much. It's an inside candle. It's red, just on the upper end of the range though, so not telling you a whole lot. But you can see it's in the context of like this big potential low here. What is that? 75.36. So that's going to be a big line in the sand. Like, does it hold? Okay, so that's XLE, and I mentioned Exxon was bucking the trend, and you can see it's just staying above that gap pretty magically, and there's a little double bottom action here. So what is that level? So that it's about 113 is your line in the sand on that daily chart, and you can see on the weekly chart it's just kind of perched up here. Still looks like it wants to go higher, which is really interesting, kind of bucking the trend there. And look at the monthly chart. Most importantly, look at that thing. That's a swing low on the monthly chart. That makes this a swing low, this candle, because we're above the high of this candle, which is 113.84. So you want to watch that level, 113.84. And we talked about 113 being a pivot point. So obviously, if we get down to 113, that means we've already broken below. We've already started to eat into this swing low that may not be active anymore. But this is clearly holding up much better than the rest. Now let's look at some of the other ones. PSX, look at that. That's underperforming. So that's Phillips 66. You can see on the monthly chart. We'll just go through the monthly charts really quickly. OIH, It's moving into the lower end of the range. So OIH is massively outperforming XLE or underperforming XLE and really crude oil even itself. So there's a potential higher probability short. Ooh, ConocoPhillips, red shooter. Still at the upper end of the range, to be fair, but not looking great. Devon Energy holding on to green, just barely, is at the upper end of the range, and it's an inside month. But I mean, look at this on the back of this big move lower. I mean, that said, what you're playing for is this a major low that you've been looking for a move higher? Doesn't mean you're going to get a V-shaped recovery, though, to be fair. What about Marathon Oil? Ooh, that's a big, long red candle. It's still technically closer to the higher end of the range, but not by much. This thing looks like it has some downside momentum coming. What about Chevron? Ooh, it's just hanging out there. So Chevron is actually, it is still a monthly swing low, just like Exxon. So it makes sense. Money is piling into the big integrated ones, but it is hanging on by a thread here. So that's a high at 166.80. And what else? Let's see, Valero. Ooh, yikes. Valero, big bearish outside can. Not so it didn't. It's not bearish outside because it didn't make a higher high, but it just made a lower low, and it is solid red. Yikes. Let's actually take this one as the one to kind of zoom in on first. So we look at the daily chart. This was our last very recognizable daily cycle low on day 38. And then we kind of chopped around a little bit, had this undercut low, which looked like, okay, is that a false breakdown? Not quite. We have this like triple top situation here. A move, again, this is your fake out. This looks like it's a higher low. It's going to take us higher. Now we've undercut this. This is really your moment of truth because if there is no significant bounce from here, then that implies a drop down to this like 114 area. Like I'd say like right around there. That would be your next, potential level of support. So this is actually setting up as a potential higher probability short. And if we look at the weekly chart, yeah, I mean, look at that, just hanging out there. What you expect to see is some follow through next week, something like that. So Valero looking like one of the weaker of the bunch. Let's look at some of the other ones. Oh, let's look at XOP. We did not look at that one. So big inside month on the monthly chart. It is red, so not great. Again, that's a really quick way to look at things very fast. High level, is it green or red on the higher time frames? In this case, most of these are red. And look at that big lower low on the weekly chart. Yikes. That's a really bad sign. That tells you that this rally here, you can see this rally, of 4 weeks long, right? 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks is over, right? That's what this suggests here, that this rally is over. And you would expect to get some downside follow through the next few weeks to extinguish this rally, take out this low. This is interesting. This will definitely definitely some good setups here. So that's XOP. Let's look at some of the other ones. So Phillips, right? So you can see they're basically starting a daily cycle decline. So like Phillips is starting a daily cycle decline here. Call it a top on day 12. OIH, I'm guessing, is a similar kind of situation. Yikes. That's an even earlier top. That's a top on day 6. And then you have this like ugly little lower high here. So you top out, make this move, another little lower high. Now, this would be a double bottom, and excuse all of these lines. That might make things hard to see. But you can see you might have a little double bottom here. That's where this line is here. That's your last sort of your last kind of hope. Otherwise, again, same kind of idea. It implies that this rally is potentially about to be extinguished. That's OIH. Let's see, zooming in on some of the other ones. Chevron. So this looks a little bit less ominous on the daily chart. I mean, this could be more of a bull flag. Again, hanging on to this gap fill. So that's a big story for most of them on the daily chart. That gap fill, what happens at that line. Valero, yikes. I think we already looked at this one on the daily as well. XLE, we looked at this. So, right, you got your top on day 20. What else? Schlumberger, yikes, on the daily chart. Oof. So this is your daily, topped out on day 6. Pretty nasty tried to, I mean, this is a back test of this high here and got not too close. And now we're coming down again. Again, implies that this rally gets extinguished. Same idea. So won't belabor the point here. Again, Exxon and, look at that thing holding up. Exxon and Chevron are trying to hang on by a thread a little bit here. But the rest of these look like they're already starting to succumb pretty massively. So that's the update for crude oil and energy names. Thanks for watching.